from here, we can continue to the next tab and quickly see here that we get all of these numbers into our monthly plan. The way that I would play around with this metric, which is the month-over-month growth rate, that we're going to use as like our benchmark, is to look at the first number, for example, the target for January, and see if it makes sense. For example, if in October, November, December, you've generated 5 SQLs every month, and now the target for January is 12, that's going to be very hard to do. You're not scaling the budget, you're just like exploding. So in that scenario, it's going to be somewhat unrealistic. So what you're going to do here is you're going to increase the month-over-month growth rate so that you're going to have a monthly growth rate that's more aggressive, but you're going to have a better starting point that makes sense for your budget. Let's do 10 here, and that gets us to 9. We can even do like 14. Super aggressive, and then we have 7, and that makes more sense. We're more linear here in the area. So we have 5 on December, 7 on January, 8 February, March 9, and just keeps growing across the year. This gives you the benchmark, right? This is the linear growth throughout the year. The next thing that you should do is basically take these numbers, copy them here, and you can see here that once the numbers match the target that you should reach, you're seeing this in green. If you're over your target, this is going to become white. And if you're under your target, it's going to be red. So let's assume now that you want to play around with this. So you're saying like, okay, so we have some seasonality, right? And during July and August, we're going to have less leads. So you're going to change here to 12 and to 13. And now you're in the red and you need 7 more SQLs to reach your target. But you also know that you have an event in April, and that event is going to generate an extra, for example, 7 leads. So you're going to have 17 here. And you also assume that in January, because of what you know you have planned, you're going to reach 8 and not 7. We're already up. This is because of the rounding. You see my point here. You play around with these numbers until you reach or over reach your target. I would also recommend to go a bit higher if possible, just so you have this additional margin in case something goes wrong. And that's basically it. This is how you're going to have the initial plan of what you need to do every month, what's the budget that you need to reach your targets. It's very easy to explain that to a CFO or CEO, to show them how everything ties to revenue and why you're asking for your budget. It's very hard to argue with. Like, if you don't get that budget, you have a very good reason to say, I don't know how we're going to reach our targets. Obviously, this is not taking into account kind of the brand impact, but it does take into account the organic or the benchmark, right? Because in our cost per SQL here, when we say we generated 100 SQLs, we take into account all of our SQLs against our budget. Still, of course, you can also, if you believe that you need to have a brand move or some additional budget for demand, like long-term demand that you're currently not generating. This is depending on your strategy and where you're at right now. But if you don't have a demand engine currently in place and you believe that you need to work on that during the year so that in the future you'll be able to generate demand, you know that this is a long-term play and you'll have to calculate that into the budget, even though you are not able to count that in the direct scale. So you'll be able to say, this is the budget that I need in terms of like our current marketing plan. This is the additional budget that I need for testing or for trying new things. And this is the budget that I need for branding. Then you can argue about that. Like, this is a non-negotiable budget. And you can work with your CFO and CEO to understand if it makes sense this year to do all of the other things. So I guess this is where you start. And from here, what you need to do is just take these numbers, use them as targets, create a channel plan, like the usual one that you see for any marketer. With these targets in mind, calculate the budget. You have a monthly budget here that you need to input, and you can use it to then assign the different costs to every channel. And yeah, that's basically it. And take into account that these numbers are not going to change likely unless the revenue target changes, which in that case, you'll need to do this again. But the channel mix, the channel plan, the investments that you're going to make are going to change. And that's why this is the most important thing. And the next stage of actually assigning the different channels to different budgets is a bit more flexible, and it's not a must. Like, you need to do it once, and then you need to iterate on it as soon as possible every time you see that you're not hitting your targets. This is the framework and the idea, and I hope that makes sense, and a lot of people can use this to build better plans for 2023.